Hello, Cabrillo Cubs. It's Miss Hubler again. I can't believe this is your last week of school, and this will be our last book of the school year. Can't wait to see you guys next year, but I hope you have a great summer and a safe summer, and you all stay healthy. And today I'm going to read to you, No More Pencils, No More Books, No More Teachers' Dirty Looks. I know this book isn't how we typically would end a school year, and this year was a little different, but I still wanted to read this story to you to bring back your days when you were in this classroom. All right. Hooray, Gilbert shouted, heading to the door. Today's the last day of school. Here are the cookies, Mother said, and your present for Miss Bird. She put out the cookies and the present into his backpack. As he ran out the door, Gilbert waved and said, "Don't forget to come to the party this afternoon. Mrs. Bird is giving out awards." Patty was waiting for him outside. She looked sad. "I'm gonna miss school," she said. "I like being in Mrs. Bird's class." "Me too," Gilbert said, "but I like summer vacation better." When they got to the classroom, Mrs. Bird was changing the number on the countdown banner. Yesterday it said 2 days left to school. Today it said 1 day left to school. Mrs. Bird didn't look very sad. Louis ran into the classroom singing, "No more pencils, no more books, no more teachers' dirty looks." Mrs. Bird heard him, but she didn't give him a dirty look. She just smiled and said, "Settle down, everyone. We have a lot to do this morning, starting with cleaning out our desks." "My desk is already cleaned," Philip said proudly. Louis rolled his eyes and said, "Maybe you'll get the Clean Desk Award." "No," Philip said back, "I'm going to get the Best Reader Award. Everyone knows I'm the best reader in the class." Gilbert wondered if he would get an award. He wasn't the best reader, and he certainly didn't have the cleanest desk. Neither did Mrs. Bird. She was emptying out her bottom drawer. 4 packs of gum spilled onto the floor. "Oh my," she said. "Here's your gum, Louis. You can have it back now." "That's okay," Louis answered, scraping the green paint off the side of his desk. "You can keep it to remember me by." Mrs. Bird laughed and said, "I don't think I'll ever forget you, Louis." Before lunch, they practiced their songs and poems for the parents. Frank was nervous, and Mrs. Bird told him to pretend that everyone in the audience was sitting in their underwear. That made Frank giggle, and he wasn't nervous anymore. "Thanks," Frank said. "My grandma and grandpa are coming, and I don't want to mess up." Then he giggled at the thought of his grandparents sitting in the audience in their underwear. You will all do fine," Mrs. Bird said proudly when they were finished. "And remember, after the poems, I'll give out the awards, so remain seated at the front of the room." At recess, Gilbert and Patty talked about who might get awards. "Philip is the best reader for sure," Gilbert said. "Frank is good in math," Patty added. "He might get a math award." "And you're the best speller, Patty," said Mrs. Gilbert. "I know you'll get an award for that." Patty smiled and said, "Well, you're the best at... Before she could think of what Gilbert did best, Louis said, "What's the big deal? Everyone gets an award." Gilbert hoped that was true, but he didn't know what he was best at. When they returned to the classroom, all the desks were clean, all the books were boxed, and all the supplies were packed. It didn't feel like Mrs. Bird's classroom anymore. Just as Gilbert started to feel sad, the parents began to arrive. Then Gilbert started to feel nervous. He said his poem over and over in his head. Mrs. Bird welcomed everyone. Then her class sang the songs they had practiced. Louis sang the loudest, and Gilbert wondered if there was an award for a loud singer award. Soon it was time for Gilbert to recite his first poem. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. He said, "Summer's here, I can't wait, but first grade was really great. Mrs. Bird's the very best, even when she gives a test." Gilbert sat down. Phew, He didn't make a single mistake. Maybe he'd get an award for the best poem. But Margaret was good also. We learned to spell, we learned to read, we learned a lot of things indeed. Even Frank said his poem without a single mistake. I love numbers, I love math, I love counting, even in the bath. When it was Philip's turn to recite the last poem, he stepped forward. His knees were wobbly, and he looked very pale. He had forgotten his poem. Mrs. Bird handed him a copy, but when Philip tried to read it, all that came out was a squeak, a squeak. Gilbert's little sister, Lola, started to laugh, and Gilbert gave her a dirty look. No one knew what to do, so Gilbert took the paper and started reading. Each day in school, I try to be as good as a student as I can be, and if I have one book or 3. Then Philip finally remembered the rest, blurted out, I always have a friend with me. Everyone clapped, and Philip turned red. Philip was still red when Mrs. Bird gave him the Best Reader Award. Patty got the Spelling Award. Margaret got one for handwriting, and Kenny got the best attendance. Even Louis got an award for being the funniest. Gilbert stood there. One by one, the ribbons were given out. He thought he might get the Best Artist Award, but Susan got it instead. Maybe there wouldn't be an award for Gilbert after all. Finally, Mrs. Bird said, and the last award goes to Gilbert. He gets the Good Friend Award. Gilbert was happy. He knew what he was good at, he thought, but Mrs. Bird was the best teacher ever. As they ate cookies and cake, Miss Bird said, I have a gift for each of you to take home, a memory book of pictures from your first grade class. Hey, Louis, flipping through the pages, here's the snowman that Gilbert helped me make. In our trip to the Pilgrim town, Philip added, Gilbert was my buddy on the bus. Oh, the last page of memories was a picture of the whole class, including Mrs. Bird. I'm really going to miss you all, she said, looking like she was going to cry. And the cake said, good luck in 2nd grade. Maybe Mrs. Bird should open her gifts, Patty whispered. I bought her a nice plant. That will cheer her up. I'm giving her a picture of myself, Philip whispered back, so she won't forget me. Gilbert's gift was a t-shirt that said, #1 teacher. Now he wished that he'd given her a picture of himself. What if she forgot who Gilbert was? Sadly, Gilbert said to Miss Bird, I wish you could always be our teacher. Mrs. Bird smiled and said, me too. But remember, you can still come visit me when you're in 2nd grade. It's not the same, Gilbert answered quietly. The bell rang and everyone took turns hugging Mrs. Bird until Mrs. Bird was all hugged out. As they walked home, Gilbert said, Mrs. Bird looked so sad when we left. What will she do all summer without us? Patty sighed and said, she'll probably get busy getting ready for her new class. Then Gilbert started to sniffle. Mrs. Bird was awful sad, he said. She's going to miss me very, very much. Father said, I know what will make her feel better. They were standing in front of the ice cream shop. Oh my goodness. Gilbert saw all of his friends inside and he started to feel better. No one was sad at all. Everyone was happy that summer vacation was finally here. Especially Mrs. Bird. Well, Cabrillo Cubs, I hope you all have a terrific summer, and I will see you next year. But the 2nd graders that are going on to Burdette, like the book says, come back and visit us all. All right, take care. Bye.